Hi everyone, and welcome back to Internet Reports Pulse Update, the bi-weekly podcast where we discuss what's up, what's down, what's working and not working, and generally keep our finger on the pulse of how the internet is holding up. So this week we're kicking off the new year with a special episode covering key outage trends we've seen over the past year and tips for proactively mitigating the impacts of future outages as we head into 2024. I'm Mike Hicks, Principal Solutions Analyst here at ThousandEyes, and I'll be your host today. So with that, let's jump in. So first, let's chat about the increase in cloud service provider CSP outages that we observed in 2023. And perhaps this was due to a rise in cloud infrastructure deployed worldwide. So as observed in previous years, the two main types of outages we see are internet service providers, ISPs, and cloud service providers, CSPs. So out of these, ISP-related outages continue to be the majority by a significant margin. And in 2023, the total number of ISP outages increased compared to the previous years. However, while total ISP outages increase, the average, and I'm talking here about the trend in terms of the number of ISP outages we see over in a given month, is actually declining. While if you have to look at the average number of cloud service provider outages from a month, they've actually been trending upward. So we've seen this sort of shift where we've seen the ISP outages not diminishing in numbers, but actually sort of going down from a downward trend week over week, whereas the cloud providers have actually gone upwards there. Over the past year, we've actually seen this slight shift in the ratio between ISP outages and CSP outages. So while ISP outages still account for most outages, the ratio has changed from around 89 to 11 in 2022 to around 83-17 in 2023. So this increase in CSP outages may be due to the rise in cloud infrastructure deployed worldwide. As we mentioned earlier, the increase in demand for compute and data transmission capacity, potentially due to the AI boom, and this growth of the infrastructure has been exponential, providing more opportunities for connectivity. And when we say more opportunities for connectivity, what I actually mean is there are more options to connect into the internet to actually get to the access to your applications and for your users to access across the network. And so while major outages can and still will occur, if you understand the connectivity options you have, their impact on performance is actually going to be critical to maintaining a good digital experience for all your users wherever they are. This past year, we also observed an increase in the percentage of outages that were US-based, as outage impacts become more contained and less likely to spread from the US to other regions. In 2023, outages that occurred in the United States accounted for an average of 37% of all outages observed. Now, this is up from 34% in 2022. So furthermore, during 6 months of 2023, the rate of outages in the US exceeded 40%, whereas during 2022, this only occurred in 2 months. What might explain this increase? So it's important to note the nature of the outages has changed significantly. In recent years, there's been a widespread outages that cause cascading effects on other high-profile apps or services. However, as 2023 progressed, these outages all but disappeared. Instead, they have been replaced with sort of shorter duration outages, more contained outage disruptions. So while in the past, an outages that started in the US may have actually spread globally, now the impacts remain more localized. And what we mean by that is that where the infrastructure and how things were connected in the past, we had this, if you like, this domino effect or this cascading effect. So I make a change in one part of the network, I have this flow-on effect where it actually sort of affects downstream and then sort of cascades across the environment there. Whereas what I've actually started to see is we're sort of more contained within a localized area because the outage itself hasn't essentially spread. So although I've seen sort of more outages, the duration's actually been shorter. And I said, if you like, the impact area or the zone has actually been less. And this is also accounting for this fact that we're seeing quite a resilience within the internet itself. We've talked about the more connectivity opportunities and the fact we can actually connect, we have more opportunities to connect, we have different ways of actually connecting in from there. This also then flows back and there's multiple paths across there, which means I can now take, there's more resilient paths as well, or there's more, the resilience that's built into the internet itself allows me to sort of route around some of these issues there. So what I'm starting to see is potentially performance degradation, but I'm not actually seeing this complete outage where I have something dropped. So what does this really mean then? So as organizations, such as applications owners, they've got to approach detection incident response slightly differently. So these shorter, more localized outages have different impacts and require different responses than a massive outage. They still impact performance, but they need to be navigated just with different systems, processes. So I need to see the outage in the context of my environment. So an analogy I always like to draw is around a power supply coming in. So as I mentioned in previous podcasts, I live in the outback in Australia. And with that, we have some sort of potential power problems occurring, or we have fluctuations in power there. Now, if my power goes out completely, it's a major outage there, it's impacting, say, the whole of my street, then I'll actually get an alert coming in from the utility themselves. So the utility will say there's a power outage in your area, and we're working to resolve it. Now, at that point, I know what's happening. It's outside of my control, and therefore I can I can put my mitigation processes in place, which might mean I start up the generator. It might mean I do some battery processing, depending on their time to resolution. Now, if there's something more subtle that occurs in there, so i.e. just a fuse blows or something trips out within the area there, then it's only impacting a part of my house there. So therefore, it's not impacting the whole street. So therefore, that is something that I have to have visibility on. I have to troubleshoot to identify what that is. And this is the same when we bring that back into these small outages, these impacts. If I go back and I have a massive outage, then effectively the whole world knows about it, and you can instigate your process to work around there. But what if that's just a small outage, or just impacting the context, just impacting your own environment? The responsibility is on you to go in and to troubleshoot that, to understand where that performance degradation is, to understand what steps you need to take. Is it something you can resolve? Is it outside your control? Who is the responsible party that needs to make that fix? And this is the same thing we're starting to see. We've seen these small duration outages occur. And this is then why you need to be able to sort of see this complete service delivery chain, including dependencies, including stuff outside your area there, so that you can actually start to smooth out these glitches, these outages there, because they're causing degradation performance. So now let's talk about application outages. So it seems that in 2023, application outages increased both in frequency and number. Now, although these were not as prevalent as network outages, they seem to have a greater impact. Now, why was this? We talked about the resilience of the network, i.e. its ability to route around an outage. We talked about more connectivity points in some of the earlier trends there. However, since applications rely on this complex network of interconnected dependencies to work properly, so there's a higher risk for extensive disruption and impact on the users if any of these service or aggregation points fail or experience a degradation. So what I mean by degradation or a failure into a particular service is the application is actually up. We can actually get to the application itself, but we cannot execute a particular function. This might be a search function. It might be something where we're executing a pull to actually sort of pull something from an API or something there to an external dependency there. But the point is, without that particular function being available, the application itself becomes unusable. So at best, it's a degraded performance, i.e. the page might take a long time to render. At worst, it becomes unusable. I can't get around from there. So what I'm trying to say there is, just because something's available doesn't necessarily mean it's working properly. So I might be actually passing all my performance tests. I might have all my green lights on. Can we reach the application? Can all my users get to it? Is it available? So availability isn't necessarily a sign of usability. And what we started to see over this previous year is this performance and degradation. So these little glitches is actually on the rise. Now, it's actually to do this, it's important then to understand how the application interacts with the network, but also how the network interacts with the application. Now, by doing this, you can understand how for each different user from each different location across these different media connecting there, how the entire service delivery chain operates and how it reaches each individual users. So if I actually do this, I can do a couple of things. So to start with, I can identify any common aggregation points, and I can plan and I can remediate or execute an action plan so they don't sort of happen again, or to stop these when they're occurring from there. But more importantly, let's think about this continuous improvement. I'm starting to see these degradations increase. Now, this is going to impact on my user satisfaction, on my user productivity. Now, if I can actually start to smooth out those, so I can actually identify the degradation in performance, happens to be because a function is actually failing, or it happens to be because this particular function is located in a particular area where my users aren't. I can now start to sort of optimize this. I can even move functions around. I can look for these common aggregating points, so I avoid these issues occurring in the first place. So whereas an outage is completely damaging, we know what's going on. It's like a break fix. We need to identify that and actually resolve that. These subtle degradation outages can also have almost a more dramatic impact around from there. So it's important to understand how my service delivery chain is put together so we can actually take steps to mitigate these going forward. So that's our show. Please like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. Not only does this ensure you're in the know for when a new episode is published, but also helps us in shaping the show for you. And if you're interested in more insights on recent trends and some of 2023's more notable outages, please join us for our Top Outage of 23 webinar, where we're going to walk you through some of the outages that I actually alluded to or talked to in this podcast, and how they unfolded, share some tips which help you minimise the impact of future disruptions. So please register now at the link in the description box below. As always, follow us on X at ThousandEyes. So any questions, feedback or guests you'd like to see on the show, please send us a note at internetreport@thousandeyes.com. We really appreciate your feedback. So until next time, goodbye.